Jenna and I had always found solace on the open road. It was our shared sanctuary, a canvas of asphalt and landscapes where our worries dissolved in the rearview mirror. Every mile was a story, every destination a fresh start. This trip was meant to be just another chapter in our collection of weekend getaways, a simple drive down the scenic coast, camping under the stars with the promise of a seaside sunrise. We left the bustling cityscape on a bright Friday afternoon, our spirits high and our old Chevy bursting with gear. Jenna managed the playlist, a mix of classic rock and indie anthems that had become our unofficial road trip soundtrack. As the urban sprawl gave way to open fields and distant mountains, our conversation meandered from mundane work chatter to excited plans for the days ahead. Hours into our journey, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of pink and orange, we spotted a couple stranded by the roadside. Their car, an old sedan, had its hood propped open, emitting wisps of steam. They looked forlorn, thumbing for a lift, their faces etched with the fatigue of being stuck in such a desolate spot. "Should we help them?" Jenna asked, her hand pausing on the volume dial. "Let's stop. It could be us in their shoes," I replied, guided by that unwritten rule of the road that binds all travelers. We pulled over, rolling down the window to greet them. Their relief was palpable. "Thank you so much," the woman exclaimed as they approached. "I'm Lila, and this is Mark. Our car just decided today was a good day to die on us." After a brief exchange, we learned that they were also headed towards the coast. It seemed like fate, or at least a fortunate coincidence. They grabbed their bags from their car, just a couple of backpacks really, and squeezed into our back seat. With new companions, our journey resumed. Mark shared stories of their travels, each tale more adventurous than the last, while Lila chimed in with comments that brought laughter all around. The chemistry was instant, a bond formed by the shared love of the road and the tales it inspired. As darkness settled in, a dense fog began to roll across the landscape. The road ahead turned murky, our headlights struggling to slice through the thickening white blanket. Mark suggested a shortcut, a lesser-known logging road that cut through the woods and promised to shave off an hour from our trip. Hesitant but trusting, I turned off the main highway. The road was uneven, gravel crunching under our tires, flanked by towering pines that loomed over us like silent sentinels. The deeper we drove, the thicker the fog became, enveloping the car in a ghostly embrace. Lila grew quiet, her earlier vivacity replaced by a tense silence. She stared out the window, her brow furrowed as if listening to something beyond our hearing. Mark whispered to her occasionally, his voice too low for us to catch any words. The atmosphere inside the car shifted. The air turned cold, and an uncomfortable feeling settled over us. Jenna gripped my hand tighter. The radio, which had been playing softly in the background, began to crackle with static. Between bursts of harsh white noise, a faint whispering emerged, as if someone was speaking just out of the range of clarity. I glanced in the rearview mirror to ask Mark and Lila if they knew what might be causing the interference, but my heart nearly stopped when I saw the back seat was empty. Not just empty of Mark and Lila, but devoid of any sign they had ever been there. No backpacks, no water bottles, nothing. "Jenna, where did they go?" I stuttered, my voice barely above a whisper. She turned to look, her face paling as she took in the empty seat. I don't know. They were just there." The whispering from the radio grew louder, now clearly distinguishable as voices. Not just any voices, Mark and Lila's. They were calling out to us, their tones twisted into something chilling, almost mocking. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as they said our names, urging us to come find them. Panic surged through me. I floored the accelerator, desperate to put as much distance between us and whatever this nightmare was. The fog outside seemed to thicken in response, swirling around the car as if trying to slow us down. Suddenly, Jenna screamed, pointing ahead. Two figures stood in the middle of the road, illuminated by our headlights through the dense fog. It was Mark and Lila, or at least their shapes. But something was horribly wrong. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and their smiles were too wide. The corners of their mouths stretched too far up their cheeks. I slammed on the brakes, the car screeching to a halt just feet away from them. The radio fell silent as we faced the figures in the road. They didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at us with those terrifying smiles. "What do you want?" I managed to choke out, my voice trembling with fear. Their smiles faded, replaced by expressions of mock sadness. "You didn't stay with us," Lila's figure said, her voice a distorted echo of her earlier, cheerful tone. "You left us behind," Mark's figure added, stepping closer to the car. The fog seemed to move with him, curling around his legs as if he were part of it. "We just wanted to share this place with you," Lila's figure said, moving forward to join Mark. "Now, you're a part of it forever." Before I could react, the figures vanished, melting into the fog as if they had never been there. I stared out into the night, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Jenna and I exchanged a look of sheer terror. Without a word, I threw the car into reverse, turning us around and speeding back toward the highway. The drive back was silent, both of us too shaken to speak. Every shadow in the fog looked like a figure waiting to emerge, and every whisper of wind sounded like a voice calling out. When we finally reached home, the sun was beginning to rise, casting weak light over a world that felt entirely different than it had the day before. We didn't talk about what happened, not wanting to make it any more real than it already was. But the memory of that night, the voices, the figures, their final words, lingered long after. Days turned into weeks, and although life slowly returned to normal, the experience stayed with us. Sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, I'd hear whispers, faint and distant, like an echo of that night. Jenna and I never went on another night drive after that, and we avoided talking about Mark and Lila, as if mentioning them might bring them back into our lives. But the road, once a place of freedom and escape, now felt like a trap, a reminder that some things are better left undiscovered. Thanks for watching our video. Have you ever had a really scary experience? We want to hear about it. You can tell us in two ways. Option 1 is, write down what happened and email it to us. The email address is in the description below. We're excited to read your story and learn all about what happened. And the second option is, record your story using your phone's recording feature. Make sure the sound is good, with no background noise. We want to make sure everyone can hear your scary story clearly. Pick whichever option works best for you, and let's explore your spooky experiences together. We're looking forward to hearing from you. And if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.